Hey everyone, Chat Sematary is back. I am your host, Deanna Chapman, and today I am joined by Drew Dietsch to talk about yet another Children of the Corn movie. We have done it again.
Yes, I actually would like to have on record the genesis of this episode happening because I think it's going to add to the, why don't I just say it, the humor of our discussion today. So we were talking, catching up, and you had mentioned, hey, I never did an episode on that new Children of the Corn movie. Would you want to do that? Unbeknownst to you, I had seen Children of the Corn. Technically, this is something we'll talk about. Its release date is listed as 2020, but it was really first available in 2023. But we'll get into that. So I had already seen it on my own, and the reasons I had done that was because I was morbidly curious. I had heard it's like, it's another Children of the Corn. It doesn't look very good. But there were some aspects to it that intrigued me. The first one being that it's written and directed by Kurt Wimmer. Kurt Wimmer is probably best known for his movie Equilibrium, which was kind of paired with The Matrix in the sense that it was a dystopian future gun-fu type movie that came out around the same time.
Okay. And
had success. And he did this movie Ultraviolet, which pretty much killed his career. And we did an episode of it on Genre Vision, so you can go listen to that if you want that. And then he was kind of in the wilderness, not really making any major projects. And then he popped up with this, and it's like, well, it's not like he's somebody I personally find to be a good filmmaker, but they're a notable one, an interesting one, and that they're attached to a Children of the Corn was interesting. And then the other thing that interests me about it when I decided to watch it on my own, outside of your knowledge, is that I heard so many people saying, like, this is the worst movie of the year so far, like in terms of release. And whenever people call something the worst, I'm immediately intrigued because I'm like, is it really? Because I've seen so much stuff that I don't think people can even comprehend being bad. So when something's really, when something's really being called the worst, I'm like, all right, well, I'm kind of intrigued. And the fact that it was connected to a Stephen King, property and Kurt Wimmer and stuff, I checked it out. This was a while ago that I watched it, probably like a month or so ago. And then you asked me this question, and my reply to you was like, it was basically, Deanna, I just want you to know there is no one else on the planet I would rewatch this movie for other than you to do this episode, because Children of the Corn, I'm just going to call it Children of the Corn 2023 so that, we have some, because there's like multiple just Children of the Corns now.
Too many.
Yes. And Children of the Corn 2023, I'm going to start with my geekiest, what's really a nitpick criticism, but I think is the seed that grows into the mighty oak of everything, not everything, but a lot of what's wrong with this movie.
Please do.
My geekiest criticism that doesn't really matter is that this isn't even set in Gatlin.
Yeah.
Obviously the town in the original short story and used for many things. No, this is in the town of Rylestone. And it's not that it has to be Gatlin, but that starts, like, again, this is how the awfulness of this movie begins to spread. Because in terms of getting away with calling itself Children of the Corn, it technically checks those boxes. It's like, well, it's a small rural American farm, rural town where the kids uprise and kill all the adults and take over. And there's some kind of supernatural thing in the cornfield that has a name called He Who Walks. That's about it. Other than that, I really, Stephen King got them to take his name off, like the Lawnmower Man. I would pray. This probably isn't even a blip on his radar, but it's like, take his name off this. So
yeah, I feel like you can say that about a lot of these Children of the Corn movies, to be honest. Especially like once you get past, honestly, mostly just the original. There are certain aspects that at least stay true to like kind of the story King was telling in ones after that. But I've watched the first 4 and this one now. So I am only 5 Children of the Corn movies deep.
That's more than me. I've seen. I know I saw the second one back because when I rented the first three when I was younger, and that's the only one that I don't remember at all. It's like, man, it must have been like really boring. Or
the second one was really bad. The only reason that recently a couple more of these have interested me is because like Naomi Watts stars in Children of the Corn 4, and Children of the Corn 5 has Alexis Arquette, Eva Mendes, Kane Hodder, David Carradine. Like all these names we're all familiar with.
Notable names. Yeah, that is one of the ones I've seen. But no, I mean, this gets away with being a Children of the Corn, but really this is written and directed by Kurt Remmer, so he is getting the full brunt of the criticism here. And I fully believe that he likely wrote this mostly independent of any other contribution. This reads very much like his thing, where he always has very strong, very obvious, very blunt socio-political messaging, like in his stories, and often very stupid. And that's certainly the case here, because I think that that Children of the Corn 2023 actually peaks so early in the worst scene, because the worst scene is automatically kind of the best scene, and it is the town hall meeting scene. This one, it's like there's some kids. I cannot even begin to try and run down the entirety of this plot, but basically it's like there was a kid that went crazy at like a daycare center at the beginning and was killing a bunch of the adults, and they were trying to, so when they came in to take him down, they put some gas into the daycare center to try and knock him out, but it ended up like killing him and a bunch of other kids. And that's like the tragedy that sets things off. The psycho kid's younger sister gets adopted by Bruce Spence, the only actor that I recognize. I feel like dad character might be also a character actor, but I'm going to get into it. We'll get into him in a second. But Bruce Spence, it's just depressing seeing him in this, and I hope he got paid something substantial. But he adopts the little girl, and then she is becoming she's basically the Isaac of this story for, Children of the Corn aficionados. She's going to be the leader of the child uprising.
Yeah, it's just wild what they did with this one. I was watching it, and I think I was maybe 10 minutes in, and I was like, oh boy, this is going to be so bad. And I feel like with these, a lot of the problem is that there isn't really anyone trying to do these movies in a more creative way. A lot of them will follow the same kind of formula, but like when I watched Children of the Corn 4, it was different because a lot of it did not take place in the fields.
Sure.
A lot of it took place in the actual town itself with stuff going on.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, that one at least did something a little different, but it still wasn't very good.
No, I mean, the high watermark, I still feel is 3. At this point, certainly of the ones we've done and of the ones I've seen, the only one I would even recommend watching at this point. So for this one, the story is about that, like, this town, Rylestone, apparently sold out to some big corporation to allow them to like use particular chemicals on their corn. And, they're a corn town. That's what, what their economy is based on. And these chemicals over time have rotted the corn. The corn is dying. And now something needs to change. All of this with, the setup of, okay, there is potentially some supernatural thing out in the corn, and it is speaking through or being or leading these children, as we'll find out. So this is all dumped in this town hall scene, which seems to go on forever. It's the longest scene maybe in movie history in terms of like how it feels.
Yeah.
This is a sequence that I would show to people when it's like, what do we talk about when we talk about bad movies or like movies not working? Because this is a huge exposition dump in multiple ways, and it all just comes across as blunt and ridiculous. So
this took me out of the movie so fast. I was like, okay, we're done here, but I do have to keep watching it.
Yeah, we get this town, like this town hall scene, like is the movie. Like there's other stuff that's technically more exciting or interesting. Technically, like later in the movie, It's not really interesting or exciting, but this town hall scene is like, okay, I understand why this is a particular type of of bad movie is we're getting all of this exposition, like who the guy up at the town hall meeting is talking. It's like, okay, he's the mayor. And he's talking about, look, our corn's dying. And then another guy has to come up and everybody speaks. This is one of those problems with certain writers where everybody talks like they all have the same voice, where ostensibly our protagonist, our lead, Bolin Williams, she talks just like the people at the town hall talk when talking about, here's all the problems we have with the government. Yeah. And it's like, so they're going on about, the corn's dying and, we're not going to be able, we're all poor and going to be out of work and yada. And then the mayor says, we have to leave corn behind. Here's how we're going to do it. Subsidies. The government will pay us not to grow corn. And you just feel like you've stumbled across a Facebook post, like from like a demented like grandparent or uncle who's like
100%.
Yeah, like who's talking politics, and you're just like, I thought I was watching a movie. But then so we're getting all of this exposition about that. Then Bolin interrupts and is like, you didn't even do it, blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't matter. But then the mayor reveals in this moment and goes, my daughter, everyone's like, oh, so now you're revealing that she's also this character's daughter, and that's why they're important. And so then they're all like, okay, we only have 2 days to get back to the salesperson with this. And so we all have to vote now if we're going to do this. And so everybody, pretty much everybody votes like, yes, we'll take the subsidies. But all this time, the kids, being led by Eden, of course, our young Isaac for this. When everybody at the town hall votes like, all right, it's approved, we're going to do the subsidies. Then Eden's like, everybody hasn't voted yet. What would the children have to vote? And, this is another one of those like weird, all this political stuff going on. It's like, is this actually talking about children's rights? Like maybe it thinks it is, but it's not. But it does lead to one of my biggest laughs in the movie, which is where one of the redneck guys that was talking earlier in the town hall thing literally starts laughing and pointing. Like it's the most like cliche thing. He just goes, little kids voting. And then it cuts to this guy, some extra, some day player there, and he is pointing his finger at the kid and laughing like everybody else, but he points and he just goes, ho ho ho, like exactly like that. And this whole scene is an encapsulation of so much what's wrong with the movie. It's wrong, like it looks super cheap, like this town hall looks so rinky-dink. It doesn't even look like a real town hall. It looks like some school cafeteria that they got for a day and tried to, repurpose into a town hall. My goodness. And this is before any of the real supernatural horror stuff starts kicking off.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to the Swamp Thing corn monster.
Swamp Thing's being... I remembered it I remembered it being worse than it was, to be fair. When I watched it, it's like, okay, because I remembered it having like no definition. He who walks in this is basically like low budget rushed VFX Corn Groot.
There we go. That's probably a little better.
Yeah, Corn Groot.
Yeah, Corn Groot.
But with no character in terms of incarnations of he who walks behind the rose that we've gotten in movies. This is certainly at the bottom of the barrel. It's embarrassingly bad. And yes, what it eventually ends up being is that, well, the kids are going to take over the town and kill off the adults. And for a big part, like they get them all pinned in, like jailed in somehow, and gas them like they gas the kids. Because like that whole plot, the thing that kicked off the movie is kind of, that's it. Like it never really becomes like a resonating event throughout the movie. Like they don't focus on it hardly enough or call back to it, or, you know, is Eden just doing this for revenge because it was her brother that went, you know, cuckoo and killed everybody and it's like, no. I do want to say, before we get to it, because now's the stretch of the movie where we can just tear it to shreds. I do want to say I feel awful for pretty much the entire cast.
Yeah.
Because one, they're extremely young actors, and that's always, difficult. Two, what they are being asked to do and say is just, it is so damaging to an actor's career to have to, it's like, do not put this on your reel, like, ever. There is a moment when, I think this is when the kids are starting to kill off people, and our lead, Bolin, says to another character, "This is insanity. This is completely insane." That's a line that was written by Kurt Wimmer, and he made that young actress say that line with total sincerity, not realizing that is a really dumb line of dialogue to have a character say. So, and Eden, the young actress that plays Eden, I think she gets it the worst because she has to, however she was directed, clearly her performance just isn't there. She's never menacing. She's just, everything that she does to try and be like, there's a shot, and it's clear that they wanted to get this shot where later that they take a whole bunch of the adults out to the field and bury them in this hole, and there's this low angle shot of her standing in front of a bulldozer with her arms crossed, and it looks like the poster to some, like, I don't know, Disney Channel, Nickelodeon movie. Of, like, and it's like, and I just know, I can see Kurt Wimmer is like, oh, this shot, this is it. Like, this is so cool. It says so much. Like, it's so intimidating. And then when you realize it's like, no, it looks like she, it looks like a Disney Channel movie poster.
Yeah. She honestly just looks like the grumpiest child alive. Right. And like you said, she's not menacing at all. She just looks grumpy the entire time. And I was like, this isn't really working. Isaac at least had like this adult look about him that was really kind of creepy.
It was great casting. I mean, regardless of how it was written, it was just like, that was really good casting. He just had a look and was able to, he was honestly at his best when he wasn't even delivering dialogue, when it was just, he was, just like glaring and stuff.
Exactly.
But I mean, there's just so much, like, earlier in the movie, Eden is like super into the Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland. And like she has the kids slaughter a bunch of pigs and paint the corn red, like in that. And it's like, okay, I mean, that's something. It's stupid, but it's something. But then again, totally dropped. Like, by the time the second half of the movie's playing, that has nothing to do with anything. It means nothing. Mm-hmm. And then, it's really just a bunch of back and forth. There's an awful sort of romantic interest for Bolin's character, who's just, again, I feel bad for that young actor, but he's just a dud, like, of a character, oh my gosh. The movie is just very, very boring in terms of actual act. Like, it's boring because things are actually happening in the movie. It's like, okay, they're rounding up the adults, they gas them. You think, oh, are they going to gas them to kill them like the event that happened in the beginning? No, they just gas them so they can take them out to the field to bury them. And it's like, okay, things are actually happening, but it's so incredibly boring. There's no real stakes. Like, Eden gets adopted by like the local pastor, that's Bruce Spence's character. And we never even see her like at home with him in any capacity. We don't see anything at all indicating what their relationship or dynamic is. But then when they go to gas the adults, he's in there and he's like, look, I didn't sin against the corn. I didn't vote against, I voted against them doing it. And Eden's like, yeah, you're right. You stood up for the corn, but you still sinned, didn't you? And I'm like, is it implying that he was being improper with Eden? Like, what does that mean? Like, there's nothing in the movie to tell me what that means.
There's so many holes in the story here. And honestly, I think some of the time would have been better served if they had actually shown like the kids rounding up the adults.
Well, yeah, because the short story and the first film, it shows us the kid uprising and then transitions into the outsiders, coming across the town type thing. And originally when the first time I watched, I was like, okay, maybe that's what this is. Like, maybe we're going to spend like half of the movie showing how they killed all the adults, and then we're going to transition into, nope. And this is another one of these, like, why would you do this other than just to structure your movie in a way that you're like, oh, we need to be more movie, is that they don't kill all of the adults at once. They kill like all of the adults who are extras and that like nobody cares about. And then they leave some of the other adults left to do like a proper sacrifice to he who walks behind the Groot. Like
yeah,
it's like, okay.
But they spend way more time with the extras.
Way more time. And look, I don't like to rag on this aspect of movies because I understand it and I've seen this not be an obstacle, but this movie looks every penny of its extremely low budget. I think that's one of the worst things about it is it's like, man, at times the way that you're shooting this and the way that it's structured, it doesn't even look like a movie. It looks like the human parts of a car commercial. Mm-hmm. Like it never looks cinematic. Like I won't say never. I mean, we did have that Disney poster shot that did look like that's a form of cinema.
Yeah.
Otherwise it just looks, I mean, it looks worse than a lot of low budget TV shows. So I do want to talk a little bit about the genesis of this movie and its lifespan, because if you look it up everywhere, it says it's a 2020 movie because technically it premiered, I want to say in an Australian film festival, because I think it was shot in Australia, New Zealand somewhere.
Yeah, I think so.
And it premiered at some festival in 2020, in October 2020. I mean, in the middle of the pandemic, and then never got distributed. And everything that came out of that one screening, I think it maybe had an extremely limited, like, I don't even know if it played at a festival, if it just like played in a theater in October in 2020 to say that it had a theatrical release.
Well, they did show it in theaters this year. Finally, once it got distribution, and I think it was only in theaters for like a week, but I did notice that, and I brought this up to you, it was streaming on Shudder for some amount of time, maybe like a month or something, and then it just disappeared.
Yeah, it's gone.
And I realized that when I had asked you, but I think it's back on Shudder again now as of this month.
Oh, okay, so they put it back on. I streaming rights are a whole enigma, but the point being that like this is actually close to a 4-year-old movie in terms of its production.
Oh, yeah.
Like, which is so funny because when I first watched this movie and I'm looking up the actors, because I'm like, oh my God, I feel so bad for these kid actors. Like if they want to continue in the business, I really hope they survive this, because this is a awful, awful showcase for them. And I'm looking, it's like, oh yeah, like the actress that plays Eden, like her IMDb pro, it's like, oh, she's already like, she looks significantly older, like 4 years, 3-4 years. And she's already aged up quite a bit in her IMDb profile. And I'm sure they're all like, please forget that we were ever a part of this.
And it's wild because like some of the actors in this have been in like massive movies, like the dad / mayor, you were saying, Callan Mulvey and Stephen Hunter. They've both been in like MCU and Lord of the Rings and all of these massive movies. Granted, they don't have huge roles in them necessarily, but still to go from like being character actors in those things to this.
Lord of the Rings wouldn't surprise me simply if it's shot in Australia, like so many Australian, and obviously New Zealand actors have a Lord of the Rings or Hobbit movie on their resume.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like nobody's coming out of this with a decent performance. And I like the lead, the Elena, I can't remember her last name right now, but the one that plays Bolin, I feel the worst for her because she is asked, like, she's just, either her director is not directing her well enough. It's very clear that his script is not written well enough when he's asking her to sincerely say lines like, this is insanity. This is completely insane.
Yeah.
Everything's a clunker. And here's the thing. If the movie had all those problems, but it still delivered on a base pleasure of like, well, there's a handful of decent kill scenes, or the monster is kind of cool, I would be way more forgiving of this. Like, I would be like, it's like, yeah, look, it's a rough thing, but there's these little, bright patches. I struggle to see anything bright like in this movie.
There's nothing except for the sun. That's the only bright thing in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, when it's glaring right into the camera and helping to make everything look plain and washed out. But the thing is, I will say I laughed a lot both times that I watched this movie because it was so dunderheaded. And so much of it is straight, like, when you hear all the dialogue and you say everything, it's so dunderheaded from the script level, like right there. It's all there, you know, in black and white on the paper. But then the production and the direction only add to all of that. By the time we have Corn Groot, you know, attacking our lead and getting mean mugging close-ups, with a like corn predator mouth.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Saying those like that's stupid, but I like stupid things if they're done well. Like you can do stupid ideas and be like, hey, but you know, it's a good effect or, you know, or whatever. You know, it's Children of the Corn 3. Children of the Corn 3 is littered with stupidity, and I love it.
Oh, absolutely. Most of the Children of the Corn movies are.
Yeah, but there's a sense of fun and there's a sense of, hey, this is wacky and we know it, so let's do our best wacky thing in Children of the Corn 3. Whereas this, it's so serious. That I think that's another really damning thing about the movie is that its tone is like, no, this is important. We're talking about important things here. When paired with the incompetence of the actual movie you're watching, it only and that's a factor in a lot of like lower budget and amateur filmmaking is that, well, you want to put, you know, all of your ideas and your beliefs into your story. And that's clear here that Kurt Wimmer's bandying about his own socio-political beliefs with whatever it has to do with. It's not like there's a clear unified idea or theme. He's just kind of, you know, it's Facebook posting. It's like, well, it's a rant, and it's kind of a rant about like 4 different things that are, I guess, sort of kind of tied together, but not really. It seems you just want to be angry at these things, and I guess you get to make a movie about it and have your characters be the ones who are angry about it.
But at the same time, just go make that movie. Why make it a Children of the Corn movie?
Yeah, I mean, there is a part of me that's like, look, if this wasn't called Children of the Corn, if it didn't have those associations, like, would it be able to be wilder, or would it, I mean, obviously it would fly more under the radar, even with its particular writer, director attached to it. But the fact that it's a Children of the Corn it does make me ask the question, like, what even is a Children of the Corn movie anymore? what is it? Because this is a really good example where it's like, well, technically it checks certain boxes that allow it to call itself Children of the Corn.
Yeah. It has children and it has corn. Those are literally the 2 boxes it checks.
Pretty much. I mean, yeah, well, it's like, okay, there is a town where the children uprise and kill the adults at the behest, seemingly, of a supernatural being that exists in the cornfield, and we'll call it He Who Walks. They don't even do, you know, Behind the Roses. Like, no, that's not, that makes it sound silly. This is serious business here. So, you know, let's call it He Who Walks instead. And so, like, I don't know, like, I'm just at a point personally where I'm like, you know, certain franchises and IPs, they're done. They're just done. Like, let them lie, let new things happen. I think we have more than proven over, how many are there now? 12, 13 of these movies?
I think it's 12.
Yeah, I wanted to say it was 12. I think we have proven beyond a shadow of the doubt that Children of the Corn is an IP that you can just put it away.
Stop.
Yeah. Unless some brilliant visionary came around with the most incredible, groundbreaking new take on Children of the Corn ever. And I don't think that's going to happen. Unless that were to happen, I think this is probably a franchise that wore out its welcome so long ago, because it's not like other horror franchises where even if it's off the beaten path, you have a cult fan base who, you know, support it. Like, you know, Puppet Master is a good example where it's like, yeah, they've made about like 12 of those movies or something. And it's never going to be as mainstream as Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. But those movies are clearly, you know, have their following. Over the 30 plus years I've been on this planet, I have never gotten the inkling that there is even a remotely substantial Children of the Corn cult following for these movies.
No, I don't think so.
If there is, please let us know. I desperately want to talk to those people, especially about this entry. Because, yeah, it's just like, the only movies I've ever heard people talk about substantially outside of this show are the first one, the third one, and then the fifth one only for the fact that I think I read in when we did our Creep Shows book, episodes, like, yeah, I think I remember in that book them saying like, 5 wasn't bad.
Sometimes 6, just because of Isaac being in that one.
Isaac came back. Well, I remember that coming out in the video store and stuff, but I don't know of I've never heard. That's all I know. The video box art for that, and I think I've seen like one still from it. The point is, like, I never see people coming out of the woodwork to be like, actually, you know what? Children of the Corn 9 kind of has some good stuff going on, which is stuff I see for every other niche genre franchise. Is somebody will come out and be like, well, Tremor 6 isn't the best one, but it has like this stuff going on. I see none of that for Children of the Corn outside of the ones that I mentioned and are some of the ones that we've done on this show. And I mean, this just feels like Children of the Corn 2023 feels like the poster child for a bigger problem in just movie making today, in that it's like, it's just like, you just have some property that has some, even the most minute level of name recognition. And it's like, well, we have to exploit that. And it's like, no, you don't. Like, this movie is proof of that. You do not. This is a bad movie.
I would argue the last 6 movies that no one's ever heard of are proof of that, but yeah.
All right, that's what I mean. Nobody's coming out of the gate being like, man, people are sleeping on Children of the Corn 10, Children of the Corn Genesis or whatever they're called, And this one just feels like I have a feeling for some person out there, maybe a younger person, this would be the first Children of the Corn movie they ever saw. Their first exposure to the name Children of the Corn at all.
Yeah, and I hate that.
Yeah, well, it's just a matter of like, it's just, it's not even a matter of I hate that, because it would be more so, I'm not going to be like, no, like, there's really something. It's like, you know what, I can go to bat for things like Children of the Corn 3, and the short story is fine, like, it's good, but we really milked this beyond even it being dry. It's turned into dust at this point. I meant to mention this up front because just another odd thing about this movie. This movie opens with the shot of a scarecrow. And I was like, okay, I was like, okay, scarecrow on the field, scarecrow, scary, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why didn't the scarecrow ever come back? Because my thought, the first time I saw this was like, oh, that's going to end up being He Who Walks Behind the Rose. Like, they're going to have that scarecrow come to life because,
that would have been so much better than what they did.
Then Corn Groot, absolutely. Like Corn Groot is, I think, one of the most important monsters of the year in terms of people need to look and be like,
this is how not to do a monster.
Well, it's like, one, pay your VFX people, like pay them, because at some point I get the feeling like this doesn't, in all honesty, I'll say something even to realize from a VFX standpoint, this thing doesn't look horrible in certain shots. Like, they clearly did more work on things like the close up when it has Bolin in its clutches, and it's not like the work itself is shoddy. But the other thing too is that when you're thinking of creating a monster, like, really think about what is this even, like, how are we trying to make this scary? Does this even come across as remotely scary? Because the movie I thought about so much when I watched this both times was In the Tall Grass. Did we do an episode on that? Was that you and me? I think it was.
That probably was you. It took place in a field. That seems to be most of the episodes you do.
Yeah, that's a running thing with us. Well, in the Tall Grass, I was watching this and I'm just like, man, In the Tall Grass, for all its goods and faults, was like, yeah, at least that was understanding of trying to create an atmosphere of horror and tension and scary. And this is just so flat, and it never even feels like it's trying to be scary. It never feels like it's trying to be a horror movie, which it's like, it's a baffling movie, and that's why I can remain interested. And I'll say, I actually am planning to put it on my list of notable films of the year.
For all the wrong reasons.
Well, yeah, I don't do top lists anymore. I just call them notables, because it's like, hey, these are movies from the year that I think are worth watching for one reason or the other. And here's the craziest thing I'll say, wrapping up our episode, and hopefully our particular journey with Children of the Corn movies. I pray this is the last one. I actually recommend people watch this movie because these are the kinds of movies people, I think a lot of mainstream viewers who don't go outside and, they're just going to see whatever the main thing that's being advertised on their streaming service of choice or whatever's at the movie theater. You're only really going to see the biggest, offerings from studios that have put a lot into this stuff. You need to see movies like Children of the Corn 2023 to understand the incredible gap that can exist in quality when it comes to movies, especially because this has a notable IP name attached to it. It's like this, you need to see, and it's a matter of like, you need to see it to see it's like, hey, don't always go blaming actors for a bad performance. Like none of the actors in this movie deserve any scorn personally for this, because it's like they were dealt a bum hand. Nobody can make "this is insanity, this is completely insane" a line reading like filled with sincerity. Like, you can't do it. And yeah, I mean, you need to see what depths franchises can fall to in that regard. And you need to see Corn Groot. Like Corn Groot made me so appreciative. And I already love this, but it made me more appreciative of Children of the Corn 3 being like, that movie had silly corn monster stuff, but I'll remember it as being like, you know what? It was a stop motion. It was a nice creature thing. They had some effects work. It's like, you know what? It could certainly get worse, and I've seen it. Corn Groot has taken the crown for one of the worst movie monsters I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and it's like it wasn't even really funny in the moment like the ones in Children of the Corn 3 were, at least.
Right. Well, Children of the Corn 3, again, it understood. It's like, look, we're doing a big corn snake monster thing. We're not gonna ever attain a level of seriousness with that. So why would we try to? Let's make it fun. And that's like, Corn Groot is supposed to be scary, which I can't believe everyone involved in this production, somebody had to look at that thing and be like, we're trying to make this Corn Groot scary. And then, nobody spoke up. Everybody just is like, yep, okay, yep, looks great. When do we have to get this out? Like, how many more weeks of work do we have to work on this? Because that big close-up of Corn Groot, which is trying to make him look scary with his weird corn predator mouth. I'm just like, man, you could have done this, and it could have, like, you could make Corn Groot fun, at least. Like, make him spend some money on some good gore gags and, and have at least some fun kill moments with Corn Groot, or have Corn Groot, emote more with his face instead of just, like, we only really see a face for him in this ending sequence. Instead, it's just a really bad Corn Groot. And, I'm sure this is in the history of human existence the most times Corn Groot have ever been said. So
I don't think it'll ever be topped.
No. So, Chat Sematary, record holder for the number of Corn Groots mentioned ever in human history. So yeah, it's bad. Like, it might be, I can't speak for you, Deanna, because obviously you've done a ton of things for this show, but I think this is the worst movie you and I have done as an episode.
Oh, that we can agree on. I think there's only one Stephen King adaptation I've rated lower than this, and it was A Return to Salem's Lot.
Oh, okay. Which is very, like, tangential even. Really?
Yeah. It has the same problems. It's like it took this name and has absolutely nothing to do with any of it.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, this is, but that's the thing. When something actually deserves being called the worst of something, I have to at least tip my hat in a way, being like, well, you got that. Like, it's better than being totally forgettable and not worth talking about. Like, you're the worst at something. That means something. So Children of the Corn 2023, at least you can go to sleep knowing that you're the top at being the worst. So
that's some sort of accomplishment, I guess.
Yeah, if this at all sounds like, but this is the thing again. I would say if any of this even sounds like it can't be as bad as they're saying, it's like, okay, watch it. I dare you. Like,
Don't watch it twice like you did, though.
No. Well, again, I never in a million years would have ever rewatched this movie under any circumstances, except for this show, because no matter the quality of the movie, Deanna, I'm always up for having a conversation about anything and everything with you. So I will say the best thing Children of the Corn 2023 ever did was lead to us doing an episode on it.
Well, we will end it on that note because all the other notes are worse.
Yes, that is a very, very good assessment. Go watch Children of the Corn 2023 and just learn. It's a learning experience.
Yeah, it's something. Thank you, Drew.